All right. Today I'm here with another episode of Bitfinex Talks, and I'm your host, Ricardo Martinez. My guest today is Mike, the Bitcoin shooter who filmed the Comeback Country documentary. Mike, how are you? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm doing fine, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Mike, my first question for you is when did you film the Comeback Country film?
So it was over a period of time. It started in November 2021, and a little more filming in 2022 in April, May, and then the rest is just editing and squeezing it in between the rest of my regular paying projects.
Okay, cool. Um, the reason I asked you that question is because I met you at the conference this year in 2022 at the end of it, but you were there in 2021 also. How have you seen Bitcoin adoption kind of change during that time, like from your different visits?
Right. Yeah. The country changes fast. There's always new, I mean, just in terms of not just Bitcoin, but roads and buildings and lots. You're seeing new and new stuff all the time. Um, in terms of Bitcoin, um, it seems like the country's still catching on. Like everybody, when you first find Bitcoin, you're skeptical, especially if the price goes down. You start to think, okay, yeah, well, I'm smart that I didn't really get into this, but there's plenty of places to spend. There's Bitcoin logos everywhere. It's definitely, in my opinion, the country, the number one country for you to go and actually live and experience Bitcoin. So, more education is going. I'm sure there's more nodes being run. I'm sure there's more wallets. So I'm sure the numbers are all up and up. Maybe not exactly where people, would like it to be. They want like everybody in every single store, but that will come. But to answer the question, yeah, I think adoption's going just fine. I think it's going better than expected, in my opinion.
Am I incorrect in assuming that the film premiered at the conference this year, adopting Bitcoin?
It premiered actually a couple months beforehand, in
Okay.
at the end of September. September 30th was the date that it went out, which was the same date that Clinton in '96 had signed the Immigration Act, which sent a lot of the gang members to El Salvador. So anyway, yeah, it was launched September 30th, and then it got some attention, and Nayib Bukele tweeted it, and then yeah, Adopting Bitcoin had wanted to screen it, and yeah, what an honor.
My next question is, what's the response been like? Obviously, the president of El Salvador tweeted it. That's huge. But among Bitcoiners, what's the response been like?
Yeah, I mean, everybody really enjoys it. I think it's a lot different than most Bitcoin content. Most stuff is like churn and burn in Bitcoin, right? Like it's podcasts and conversations and which are really great. There's not a ton of films, and even then, the films, it's easy to go down a rabbit hole. It's easy to get complicated in other Bitcoin stuff and kind of lose audiences. So yeah, Bitcoiners have been really impressed with it. They like that it's really short and tight and engaging and keeps people, in. But yeah, people would mention, it's not like any other Bitcoin film or video that they've seen, and they've been really really happy with it, and also just like how educational it is. Everybody would tell me that they didn't know this or that. That the gang started in LA and not in El Salvador. That we funded, so much of the war. We gave 5 billion. U.S. gave $5 billion to the war. Clinton sending them back. Like just so many small things that got covered in this little 10-minute film that I put together that really taught people. So yeah, so they've been really impressed with it, and it actually has helped them start conversations with other, Salvadorans while on the plane, or asking them, oh, oh yeah, I'm visiting. Oh, did you leave because of the Civil War? Like they didn't know any of these things. So yeah, the response has been tremendous. And some of these Bitcoin companies also want to help, like pitch in for a marketing fund and help more people just see this video and learn the story of El Salvador, and hopefully inspire more people to come visit, to help the economy in El Salvador, and also just to see, what Bitcoin can do, to an entire country too. So yeah, so it's been really great. But honestly, the response from Salvadorans directly has been, I mean, so much more. People coming up to me and saying, like, I lived through that, like, I was crying watching the film. you know, and sharing their own personal experiences and what they lived through is like, it just, you can see how much it means to them to see their story being told at at a high quality. And man, there's been nothing more meaningful for me. So that's been awesome.
Wow. Yeah, I bet that's had a huge impact on you. Have you made other Bitcoin films that people should know about?
No, nothing else. I do it professionally. I usually make short films and tell short stories. For businesses, and that's how I make my money. But I am trying to do more and more Bitcoin films. But this comeback country was something I funded myself and did on my spare time, and so there was no funding whatsoever involved in it. But I am planning another film in the Bitcoin space, and currently putting together everything to raise some funds. Looking for 20 people to contribute $25,000 each, and together will be the 21 feathered serpents. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's the plan. I would like to do Bitcoin filmmaking full time. I just got to figure out the money aspect of it.
To the listeners, if anybody's interested in contributing, uh, Mike, they can reach you on Twitter, I assume.
Yep. At Bitcoin Shooter, or on Telegram at Bitcoin Shooter. And I don't know when this airs, but by the time this airs, you probably find me at 21fs.tv, 21fs.tv. That'll take you to my next project.
One of the things you touched
Hmm.
on in the film is the crackdown that Bukele's done on the gangs and kind of cleaning up the streets. He has an
Yeah.
overwhelming approval rating from Salvadorians themselves, but he gets a lot of
Yeah.
criticism in the press and on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Um, So, when I was researching the film, I was trying to detangle that, because you have two sides. You have one side saying it's great, it's never been better here, and then you have another side saying, there's a heavy hand. He's a dictator. He's an authoritarian. And so I was trying to really get to the bottom of it. And there's no, I didn't find any hard proof of dictatorship, or of like locking up innocent people. I don't know what the incentive would be to lock up innocent people, other than it's a mistake, and you just had too big of a heavy hand. And I have heard stories of people getting released. So I just went straight to the people of El Salvador. I just asked them, like, what do you think? This is what people are saying, and what do you think about what's going on? And if you talk to anybody in El Salvador, 99 out of 100 people, they're going to tell you that they're very happy with what he's done. That they can actually move neighborhood to neighborhood now. They can come back home and visit the homes that they were born in the neighborhoods that they were born in. They can walk the street at night. They can do things at night. I mean, the kind of just most basic freedoms. So, I trust the people. I don't trust Bukele. I trust the people, and if they say that they see change, then I trust them. So I think what's happening from the outside world is, I think the success of El Salvador and the success of Bukele is going to have a big impact, and it's already having a big impact. If you go from the most dangerous country to the safest country in Latin America, what excuse does Chicago have? What excuse does any other country or city that has a violence problem going on? You really don't have an excuse. It kind of exposes that if you have a good leader, you can fix these things fast. And I think that threatens them. And then, of course, you have, El Salvador wants to break away from the IMF. Probably the most powerful group in the entire world. And so they have an incentive to, kind of tear El Salvador and tear Bukele down. So that's what I think is going on. I talk to regular people. They're overly, more than happy. I don't even know how to describe the feeling that they have with the change that's happening in their country. And I think you have these other powerful leaders and groups that stand to lose a lot if people see what a strong leader like Bukele can do. That's my take.
My personal experience was way different from the preconceived notions that I had from you know, how the media portrays everything. Um, Another thing that you talked about was the incredible growth in tourism. Can I get
Yeah.
your input or your take on the growth in tourism?
Well, it's a beautiful country, and the people are incredibly kind. So it makes sense that people would want to come visit. But due to the history and the violence and the news about it, it makes sense why people wouldn't come. So I think now that it's been cleaned up, um, people are much more likely to come and experience this. I mean, in my opinion, it's paradise. It's so beautiful. You got the mountains and volcanoes and the ocean and the jungle and everything in between. Um, and so, yeah, it makes sense that people would come. And I think also, Bitcoin is kind of was just a beautiful marketing tool for Bukele. I know that he's a Bitcoiner. Obviously, you can't fake being a Bitcoiner and get Bitcoiners to come, but using Bitcoin really put the country on the map, gave the news something else to talk about. So, yeah, I think the combination of those two things, making a paradise safe for people to come visit, and putting your country on the map by saying, "Hey, we're going to be the first Bitcoin country." Yeah, I think that'll do it. And the great thing is, it's something that benefits the people of El Salvador directly, right? Like the new money coming in provides opportunities for new businesses, and then those new businesses have opportunities for new jobs, and then people actually have work to do in their country, and they don't have to leave just to make a living and send money back home, and they have an incentive to learn skills and to learn English, and so yeah, the tourism is really powerful, and that was really the goal of the film, was to try to educate people on, hey, this is what's happened to them in the past, and this is what's happening now, and you can be a part of it. You can just come and have a beautiful vacation and just spend your money here, and you'll help these people keep going. So yeah, I think tourism's been phenomenal, right? I mean, it's like maybe since Bitcoin was announced, like over $1 billion, I think, in tourism, more than what they had projected, not to mention investment, right? People buying real estate and all of that. So yeah, I think tourism's been great, and I think if you haven't come, then I think you should come. Anybody that's out there.
One of the things that you said that I noticed as well when I was in El Salvador was that people really like the rebranding of the country. Like, instead of being known as like gang country where you're going to get kidnapped and murdered, it's
Yeah.
now known as the Bitcoin country, and it's bringing a lot of people into the country. So yeah, that's awesome. Another thing that you covered was the phenomenon surrounding Bitcoin Beach. Um,
Yep.
what were your thoughts on visiting El Zonte?
El Zonte is great. Again, like yeah, I spent most of my time there when I go to El Salvador. You just start to meet local people, and you see the same faces and have the same surf instructor, and you know, um, I think it's important to focus energy on one point, and I think that's what Bitcoin Beach really demonstrated. Um, what I thought about it is, it's surprising that some businesses still don't accept Bitcoin. I understand it, but just every time I go, there's Bitcoiners just pouring through there. You see just people like every color, every language. It's beautiful. Um, but yeah, I think it's great, and I think again, focusing on one area can be super powerful. I mean, that's what happened. That's the story of Bitcoin Beach, right? Like, you have Peterson and Chimbera and the boys down there doing social work before Bitcoin. Bitcoin gets introduced, right? COVID really helps push it along, and then you get maulers coming down there, and then all of a sudden you have this huge news story that's actually being covered in the news, you know from this tiny little place, just focusing on this tiny little place and showing, hey, look, if we focus on this and we bring Bitcoin here, um, look how amazing this is. And so yeah, I always encourage people, spend a few days in El Zante, like focus on this area and show the rest of the world why they should do the same thing. And it's already happening, right? Bitcoin Jungle and Bitcoin Lake, and they're doing another one, like a village in Bitcoin Village in Nigeria. Like, all of these places are inspired by El Zonte. Um, You know, you have Manchun Kura, the guy that's in, I forget which African country, developing a way for people to send lightning over SMS, just text message. You know, those people don't have internet; they have flip phones, and he's making it so they can send lightning. And he talks about being inspired by Bitcoin Beach and by Bukele, like staying up late at night watching Bukele talk and not being able to sleep and just working on this thing. So yeah, so that's the power of Bitcoin Beach. So yeah, I think everybody should go down there. I think it's a pilgrimage at this point. You know, you're a Bitcoiner, go down, make the pilgrimage. You know, and help develop this little town so that it'll continue to inspire other countries and other people around the world to do the same thing.
Have you personally had the chance to visit any of these other kind of little decentralized Bitcoin circular economy communities?
Not yet. I want to do Bitcoin Lake in Guatemala. It looks incredible, and Bitcoin Jungle looks great too. But no, I haven't. Have you?
No, I haven't yet. I also want to go to Bitcoin Lake. I've actually interviewed Patrick a couple times, the guy that is organizing it, and he's a cool guy. So I would like to go visit him and meet him in real life. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So what would you say is like something that people need to know about Bitcoin and just the whole, I guess, so societal change that's taking place in El Salvador?
What people need to know about Bitcoin, yeah, I guess it really depends on who you're talking to, right? Like, am I talking to like a Salvadoran who doesn't really know anything? Um, so I guess in general, what people need to know about Bitcoin is they need to understand the problems that it fixes. Um, it's hard to value anything if you don't understand the problem that it fixes, right? Like, what do I do with it? And I think when it comes to money and the problems that Bitcoin fixes, it's quite complex, right? Like, I mean, it really fixes debasement or inflation and censorship. So people need to know that, especially in El Salvador, like, what are you going to save your money in? You're just going to save it in dollars and let it melt away, because my country creates more for war and for whatever else. Um, where are you going to put your money? And Bitcoin is the best one because it can't be inflated. You can't create. No one can just create more whenever they want, um, making your money worth less. And no one can take it from you if you do it right. And no one can stop you from sending or receiving it. It sounds so simple, but those three things are incredibly profound right now. Try to name something else that can't be taken from you, or something else that you can't be stopped from sending or receiving, or something else that you could invest your time into, right? Like, we spend hours making the dollars that we earn, and so when we can buy less next year, our time is being stolen. So you need to find somewhere to put your money. So this will happen in a good time in El Salvador. When the price runs up again, people will think, oh, I thought it was dead. It's not dead. It's actually way higher now. Why is this happening? And maybe they'll start learning some of these problems um, that it fixes. But again, even outside of that, right? It really just comes down to education. Even if people in El Salvador are worried about like the volatility, they don't need to experience the volatility to benefit from Bitcoin. They can use just the rails, right? Like in my film, there's somebody there that pays his utility bill with Bitcoin, right? So if you wanted to save 3 hours and taking a bus ride, you can just convert cash in real time to Bitcoin, send it to somebody who is close to the utility office that'll pay the bill for you, and then that's it, right? Like, you didn't expose yourself to any volatility of the network. You just got to benefit from using um, digital cash. So I hope people in El Salvador can separate those two and see that, hey, if you don't have a bank account, digital money can really improve your life, save you time. Even if you don't want to save in it long term and experience the volatility and hang and hold on for dear life. Or if you want to save money and you can put it away for 10 years and you don't have to touch it, there's no better place to save your money than Bitcoin. So that's what I would say.
What was your personal experience spending Bitcoin in El Salvador while you were there?
Man, I always tell people the first time I was there last year, it was a surreal experience because I went down with Max and Stacy. We had done some work in a few other cities in the U.S. and then they told me they were going to be going for the conference, and it's like, yeah, I got to go do that. And my first purchase, I will never forget because it really it touched all of my senses. Um, I was on the beach and there was two ladies out there selling beer. One lady had her phone to pull up the transaction and the invoice, the Lightning invoice, and the other lady had a beer and a bottle opener. And so she's like, it's $1, right? And she shows me the invoice, and I'm like, okay, right. And so I pull up my Lightning wallet and I scan the invoice, right? And I hear the ding on her phone. I see the check mark on my phone, right? At the same time, the other girl's cracking open the beer. It's like, and she hands it to me, and it was like faster than any a credit card transaction that I've ever had, and it all happened simultaneously, and it was like, whoa, this was faster and easier and like more enjoyable than spending with a credit card or with cash and change and all that. So um since then, I've done a bunch of transactions. Like I transact on the Bitcoin rails as much as I can, whether it's buying and using it right away, Bitcoin, or, using Strike and, sending it from my cash balance, over the Lightning rails. So since then, the magic kind of goes away a little bit, but I think everyone will always remember their first transaction. I think it'll be kind of like, your first girlfriend or losing your virginity. You know what I mean? I think you'll always remember your first.
I know that a lot of people have criticized Bukele for stockpiling Bitcoin in the coffers of the country of El Salvador, especially since he did it kind of near the top. And even though he hasn't sold, like on paper, he's significantly underwater. Uh, how do you think the future will play out for El Salvador strategically, knowing that they hold this huge amount of Bitcoin?
Well, um, I'm either going to be celebrating with them or sinking with them. No, I mean, really, Bitcoiners, I think we celebrate always. I think that they don't have a ton of money in it. I think, I mean, they're buying one every day. That's legit. But I think it's going to turn out um, just fine. Again, I think anybody at any size, individual, business, or country level, as long as you give Bitcoin the respect it demands, you won't get burned. And one of the biggest things it demands is your time and patience. Putting money in, like I always tell people, just just pretend it's not there. Like it's a retirement account, right? Like it's social security. It's money that you are paying for right now that you cannot touch for a long time. And if you can do that, it's going to reward you um, handsomely, because the value of Bitcoin, right? The more people that understand the value of the Bitcoin, the more the value is going to go up. And inflation isn't going anywhere, in my opinion. I think we're just getting started, and censorship isn't going anywhere, in my opinion. So as these things are happening more, I think more people will understand the value of Bitcoin, and more people will be in Bitcoin, and the value will go up. So I think El Salvador is putting themselves in a great position to be, what do they say, like the Singapore of Latin America. They're going to have a huge first movers advantage. And while they're, because that's what happens. When the price runs up, that's when you get people's attention. It's high and they get their attention and they wait, and then it comes down. And they think they're so smart, and then it bounces way the fuck up, right? And then they start looking into it. So by the time it's way up there and El Salvador has, it's proven that it's been a crazy smart investment, then other countries are going to start getting on, and then they're going to have to deal with all the same things that El Salvador has dealt with, trying to explain to their population how to use it and all this stuff. So I think it's going to work out just fine for Bitcoin, so long as they don't lose the coin or sell the coin, but I don't think that's happening.
I guess my last question for you is, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin itself? In just 13 years becoming like a geopolitical factor.
I think it's fast. I think that's just the craziest thing is when you're inside of the bubble, things seem like they're happening slowly. But I think if you go back 2 years, 3 years, 3 years, when was it? It was like 2 years ago. It was announced at Bitcoin 2021, I think, something like that. But if you go back even 6 months before the announcement, ask somebody when's the first country going to adopt Bitcoin? Like they'd be like, oh, 5 years, 10 years maybe. So uh, I think Bitcoin is moving along just fine. Um, I think El Salvador actually was an anomaly because, I mean, what other country is going to do a top-down approach and say, hey, we're going to be Bitcoin country? I mean, it literally has to be a country that has nothing to lose. I mean, even a country that has nothing to lose will lose ties with the IMF. I mean, we've seen that deter other countries already. So you have to have a country that has nothing to lose and has a leader with, I hope this is okay to say here, massive balls, because that's a dangerous thing to do. I mean, if you look at history and you read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, that is a dangerous thing to do. And so I think Bitcoin's moving along quickly. And I think that as these other countries, as Canada, as like freezing bank accounts, as inflation rages in other countries, it's just going to move things along more quickly. I try not to be too optimistic, but I think that Bitcoin is moving along faster than anyone should hope. And I think that just like the way it's hard to imagine when the price is going to run up, where it's going to go, right? Like when the price is running up, it's hard for someone to be like, okay, this is the top, because who knows if it's going to keep going up. And it always kind of just blows your mind. And I think that we're in a time right now where inflation is going to do a similar thing. I have a feeling that inflation is going to rage higher and faster than people can imagine. And I think that's the mistake that the governments are making. And through COVID, I think they just created too much money, man. I think if you boil frogs slowly, you can get away with it. But you turn up the heat too high, too fast, you're going to wake people up. And so, yeah, I think Bitcoin is doing great. I think the price is great. If you're someone like me who's working and you're saving in Bitcoin already, like the price at this point is fantastic. Like just keep it here. Like I don't mind it whatsoever. And I would embrace it going lower. And so, yeah, I think if you're worried about the price, perhaps you're overextended, or if you're an older person and all you're doing is moving money around and investing money or all in Bitcoin, you have to spend your Bitcoin now to live. That's not ideal. And I can understand why you wouldn't like it. But for someone like me who is constantly saving in Bitcoin, is constantly working, I don't stress about anything, man. I keep my Bitcoin in my own custody. I I buy Bitcoin, with any savings I have, and I'm grateful for any price I get. I'm happy with the stats I bought at 60 grand. I know it's going to sound cheap in 4 years. So, yeah, that's what I think.
That's a great way to close out the interview, man. Mike, how can people follow you and your work? I know you mentioned 21FS TV, but how else
Yeah.
can they keep track of what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see a bunch of my work on Twitter at Bitcoin Shooter. You can also see it on my website, bitcoinshooter.com. You can see the film Comeback Country at comebackcountry.com. And then, 21, the numbers 21FS as in feathered serpents.tv. And you can see what I'm doing there. And, that project is, again, about, education. The idea is to make a film that's going to smash in, all the things that people need to understand the problems that Bitcoin fixes it and how it's fixing it. And all the FUD that people usually hear, just smashed together in 60 or 90 minutes. Because I really think, that's what the world needs right now. The story of the feathered serpent it's translated to Quetzalcoatl. He was a god who brought peace and civilization to lots of civilizations around the world. Tell a story of somebody like him, and he taught them how to farm and where to farm and how to hunt and where to hunt and how to be civilized and how to build buildings and architecture. And that's what people needed at the time to take civilization to the next level. And I think Bitcoin is what people need now to take civilization to the next level. And we right now have an opportunity to be the feathered serpent and to bring it. And I think film is the best way to bring it. So long story, bitcoinshooter.com, 21fs.tv, and that'll get you there.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for doing the interview. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks, Ricardo.